Defeated as a result. If you lived in the South and were the least bit conscious of what was really going on, you'd probably be ticked off too. The taxes were being spent on corporate welfare, railroads, canals, internal improvements. The platform which Lincoln ran for election was a high tariff, internal improvements, and a central bank. Henry Clay was Lincoln's idol, and he labeled it the American system. It was a mercantilist economy, planned based on the American school ideas of Alexander Hamilton, expanded later on by Frederick List. Consisted of a high tariff to support internal improvements, such as road building, and a national bank to encourage productive enterprise and form a national currency. This program was intended to allow the United States to grow and prosper by providing a defense against the dumping of cheap foreign goods, mainly at the time from the British Empire. That so-called war was not about slavery. It was about taxation. Now read Tom DiLorenzo's book, The Real Lincoln. Read his follow-up book, Lincoln Unmasked. Read Charles Adams' book. Charles is the tax attorney. Charles is the guy who wrote Those Dirty Rotten Taxes. He's the guy that wrote For Good and for Evil. That's the history of taxation through all recorded civilization. Charles says behind every significant event in history, there's a tax story. Well, still read his book, When in the Course of Human Events. It's written from the European perspective about what was really going on. Now, finally, read Lerone Bennett Jr.'s book. Now, that's a black guy in Chicago. I haven't met him yet, but I am going to do my best to do so the next time I go to Chicago. Lerone wrote a book about 4 years ago called Forced into Glory. It's all about Mr. Lincoln. Now, if you'll see the research that guy did to produce that book, it will boggle your mind. Finally, read Emancipating Slaves, Enslaving Free Men, A History of the American Civil War by Jeffrey Rogers Humboldt. Now, when you finish these books, you begin to see more clearly the hidden agenda that is ever present in our any government activity. Continue with the train of thought by Stephen Yates. Go back another 70 years plus. I forgot what happened. Go back another 70 years plus. I can't remember what that was either. But the pattern is there. You can count on it. Every 70 years or so, something significant happens that changes the world forever. So I emailed Stephen immediately after I read his piece and pointed out that the Soviet Union came apart after 70 years, didn't it? In my book, Becoming Your Own Banker, I predicted back in 1976. Y'all hear that? I predicted this in 1976. I put this down in writing. That Social Security will fail. Before it fails, they'll attempt to prop it up. The source of funds they will use is reserves on private pension plans, profit sharing plans, 401ks, IRAs, that all. Now, everybody laughed at me. 1 year went by, the first trial balloon went up that that's possible. And now, it's common knowledge. The efforts to do so is in being by the current administration. Back in early October 2008, the incoming administration knew they were going to go in. And they already had a group put together that was surveying how do we go about confiscating that money, the reserves on the private pension plans. And the word that they use out there nowadays is a guaranteed retirement account to be administered by Social Security. Surely that's going to work, right? So do y'all see ball frog syndrome, how it works? One small deviation from tried and true principle and people become comfortable with it. It becomes normal. This leads to another deviation, etc., etc., etc. In due course, it'll lead to complete U-turn in behavior and acceptance. The